Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. Happy to be back at home in the Michigan Theater, and today very thrilled to present South African artist all the way from Cape Town, South Africa, that's way down at the very bottom, sculptor and collagist Justine Mahoney. Is there still folks finding seats? Is there something in the house going on? No? Oh, talking, yes. I'm talking. I want to thank our partners for their support, as today's program is supported by the University of Michigan Museum of Art, the Institute for the Humanities, Chelsea's River Gallery, and Michigan Radio 91.7 FM. Just a couple of announcements today. If for any reason anyone here missed the John Lewis event on this past Monday, the full talk is now up on YouTube. You can find it just by Googling John Lewis penny stamps and videos. And I will post a link on the Penny Stamp Series Facebook page. And a big thanks to Nate Davis at Intervision for turning that around quickly so folks can catch it, because it was a great moment. So if you weren't there, you should see it. The Stamps Gallery, our new gallery that the Stamp School opened in September just down the street around the corner on Division, now has its undergrad juried exhibition up. That is up until December 16th, so you should go see it. And there is an event of note happening there next Wednesday. This is the IPD trade show, Efficient and Satisfying Use of Small Living Spaces. IPD, I believe, means Integrated Project Design. I did have a note on that. I missed it. I'm sorry. But what it means is that there were 8 teams of U of M students from art and design, business, engineering, and information competing in this, there it is, Integrated Project Development Challenge, where the teams present and demonstrate their products to the public. So they're having an event this Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. at the Stamps Gallery, where attendees can go and see the actual products, test them out, and cast your vote for the best of the best. So that is Wednesday evening, 6:30 p.m. at the Stamps Gallery. We will have our regular Q&A today. This will be in the screening room, not here. So when Justine's done talking here, you go out, turn left, go down the corridor, and you'll find another theater in the theater, and can join Justine there for some questions. Please do remember to turn off your cell phones. And now to give you just a little background on Justine. I want you to know I ran into Justine Mahoney by accident. I was visiting Cape Town last February, and I happened upon an opening at her gallery, at Southern Guild Gallery there in Cape Town, and was so amazed and impressed by her work, and I invited her on the spot, which I think it may be my one and only on-the-spot invitation. Another interesting singularity of that moment was that as this opening was going on and these beautiful and amazing objects that she makes, which you'll see in a moment, I asked the gallerist out of curiosity for the price of one of her sculptures. And then I was told that she would have to consult as the prices were going up as the evening progressed. Which I've also never run into. And I think you'll understand when you see this work. Her work is being shown next week down in Miami during Art Basel, which is happening. And she was there last year, and the sculptures just fly like hotcakes off the shelves. And I'm sure there will be much more to see of this woman as an artist and her work to come in coming years. So you're lucky you're getting an early bite. Justine Mahoney, she's known for sculpture and collage. She's captivated audience with their deceptively innocent approach to exploring the dark side of human existence, drawing inspiration from the disparate realities of growing up white in 1970s Johannesburg during some of the most tumultuous decades of South African apartheid. And she is deeply influenced by all of this in her childhood experiences. In Tainted, her 2017 exhibition, Mahoney explores emotional and physical states of struggle through convoys of toy-like sculptures. These childlike figures, referred to the artist as an army of soldiers, offer an inspired view into this world of fantasy with themes centered on her own observations of gender, landscape, aspiration, and oppression. I portray emotional states like resilience and braveness in the face of adversity and see my child soldiers as standing steadfast and strong. Their role is to bring on a sense of one's own ability to move forward through extreme situations. Julian McGowan, who is one of the directors of the Southern Girl Gallery, aptly describes her work as Malice in Wonderland. Please join me in welcoming Justine Mahoney.
Hi, everyone. So I'm a sculptor. And I come from Cape Town, South Africa. I also come from the land of make-believe. I want to take you on a journey through my own personal story, starting with the studio space where I work. I'll then move you through how I see my country using collage. From there, we'll go into my past, followed by the people and things that have influenced me. From there, we'll see my current work, and finally, the new stuff that I'm interested in. So this is my studio at home. And these are the walls of my studio, where I collect my inspiration. So before I show you my images about how I see South Africa right now, I need to explain to you that I grew up during the apartheid years in South Africa. And for those of you who don't know what apartheid is or was, it was the forced segregation of black and white people by an extremely corrupt and misguided government. And during my 20s, in the 1990s, we did see the dissolution of apartheid, finally with President Nelson Mandela becoming our president. But I have to say that our country is still recovering from this. So let's go into how I see my country. I'd like these images to wash over you, just kind of immerse yourselves into the imagery, to maybe get a feeling of what it's like to be me. So I can say to you that South Africa is an extremely schizophrenic place. It's intense, it's wild, it's extremely exciting, and I couldn't imagine myself living anywhere else. So let's go into my past. I've also created a series of collages, especially for this talk, to show you the things that have formed me as a person. So this is my first memory. When I was 3 years old, I had a bone-degenerating virus in my left leg, and I was in and out of hospital for that year. The thing that saved me during that time was sitting on my bed and drawing, and so that it kind of ignited my creative force. It's the only thing that took me through that experience. At the same time, I imagined monsters coming in the windows at night and hiding underneath my bed, and the nurses seemed absolutely massive to me, and I was completely petrified. My second strong memory is of when I grew up in the suburbs of Joburg, and I would walk home from school and then go and sit on my nanny, Lizzie Mayema's bed in the afternoons and play with my dolls or do my homework. and listen to her talking with her friends from the neighborhood and listening to the radio. She would also tell me stories of when she grew up and the stories that were told to her as a child. So I got a lot of African mythology and folklore. You will also notice that her bed is propped up on paintings because of a small gremlin-like creature people still believe in today called the collages. He's so tiny that it's impossible for him to get up on the bed if it's propped up on bricks and paintings. But if he does happen to get onto your bed at night while you're sleeping, he'll move into your dreams and mess with your life and sometimes bite off your toes. So you just don't want that to happen. This could be what the collages looks like. So to this day, I still have a huge fear of something grabbing me from underneath my bed. But at the same time, I also believe that it's the space where your dreams collect, and it's where your subconscious lives. It's a place that I feel that I need to go to. It's really scary, and I'm okay with that. I need to go there to make the work that I do. I would spend hours playing in my bedroom, in my fantasy world, playing with my Barbies, pretending that they were astronauts going up to the moon, play with my dolls' houses, and think about the stories that Lizzie would tell me and infuse those stories into my games. You'll also see that I don't have eyes, and that's because I wasn't aware of what was going on in my country at the time. This is a typical 70s suburbia scene in Joburg. It's kind of like a fake veneer of happiness with people seemingly oblivious to what was going on in the country at the time also. Gangs of kids roamed freely in the streets, going up and down the road on skates and bikes and roller skates. But at the same time, there was a feeling of unease. Something wasn't quite right. You could feel it. Every year, we would go down to the coast for our beach holiday. And as I would sit in the back of my parents' car, I would look over the landscape and I would feel layers of history. But I never really felt like I fit in. But at night in my dreams, I would dream of the stories that Lizzie would tell me, and my consciousness started to slowly awaken. My eyes slowly started to open, and it felt like Africa seeped into my veins and became part of me and woke me up. At the same time, I just didn't know who I was. I still don't. I did finally wake up when I was a teenager. My eyes opened, and I became aware of everything. My heart cracked, and yeah. So this sculpture here is my very first sculpture, which I made for a series called Innocence. She's based on that time of she doesn't have eyes, so she's based on that time growing up in, not being aware. But she's also based on this girl that collects money for kids with disabilities, and because I had something wrong with my leg, I completely identified with her, and she became my best friend. Every time I would get taken to the supermarket with my mom, I would go up to her and say, "Who are you? Are you me?" And I base all of my work on her. This is a sculpture called Heroine, which is part of my second series called Tainted. And I ask of her, "Are you me?" And she says, "We are all each other," and I believe her. So now that you know my past and my present, let's go into the people and things that have influenced me. These are the incredible women of the Ndebele tribe who immerse themselves in design and painting. Almost every surface is infused with deep meaning and symbology. I'm drawn to the boldness of their colors and geometric designs and the way their belief systems are used to adorn themselves and their homes. It seems almost futuristic to me. This tradition is passed from mother to child, and almost every surface is covered. As a child, I read countless amounts of comics and watched, I still do today. Cartoons have become part of my consciousness. I look to African sculpture for the way it simplifies the human form into its most basic geometric elements. But to me, it also feels like these pieces contain the human spirit, not only the human form. So this was an iconic moment for most people. It just opened our consciousness up to the possibility of traveling into space. I think that Star Wars has become part of our mythology, and for me personally, the vast landscapes just held so many possibilities. And because of this, on my trips down to Cape Town or down to the coast every year, I would superimpose in my imaginings of androids and robots and creatures onto the landscape. I would wait for episodes of Star Trek every week just to see what could possibly be out there. And I would spend hours imagining different scenes and creatures. This film, to me, completely relates to the idea that anything alien needs to be dealt with in some way, and only the children really knew how to handle the situation. And because of this, I could then superimpose my imaginings onto the suburban streets of Joburg, not only the Karoo landscape. This film, District 9, was set on the outskirts of Joburg, depicting an alien race cordoned off within a township. And I think that this film directly relates to the idea of a police state and how one can possibly survive within it, obviously with many layers of armor, emotional armor and physical armor. So my work is based on two things. It comes from pop culture and African culture. And so this is why the concept of Afrofuturism is so exciting and interesting to me. And this is what Afrofuturism looks like to me. So these are the artists who have influenced me the most. Up at the top there, Yinka Shonibare for his African and Western interplay. Henry Fusili for his painting, The Nightmare, which totally relates to the kind of nightmares that I had as a child. And Louise Bourgeois for her depictions of emotional states. Jeff Koons for his iconic nostalgic imagery. Brian Donnelly, aka Cause, coming from a graffiti artist to a limited edition toy maker to a full-blown, larger-than-life sculpture maker. Up at the top there, well, no, before then, Paula Rigo, for her dominant children, which not only dominate the adults, but dominate the spaces around them. Gilbert and George for their iconic, larger-than-life collaging. Cindy Sherman for the way she uses her own body representing different states of humanity. And Alan Jones for his extremely un-PC and subversive representations of women, so uncool but really cool at the same time. I think the best artist coming out of the country right now is Mary Sibande, for the way that she depicts ordinary people and elevates them to icon status by positioning them in public monument statuary poses. They become heroes. So how do I condense all of this information into my process? This is my first series called Innocence. They're all about this high, and they're made of cast in bronze, and I paint layers of enamel paint over, and to me this is their sugar coating, which represents their thin veneer of happiness. And you'll see that none of them have eyes. I used charcoal drawing to bring these sculptures to life. I love the simplicity of that thick charcoal lines that I could make without too much detail. But at the same time, I felt it really limiting because I needed more layers and more complexity, and I just felt very limited. So I decided to go back to making collages like I did when I was a teenager, which really gave me... So you can see that I went back to working with old images that I collected from books and photographs, together with Pinterest. And I would categorize, I still do categorize, these images into heads and bodies and legs, and I switch between all these categories to form my collages. Almost like the game that you play when you're a child, where you get that surprise when you unroll the hidden rolls of paper to form this surprise drawing. So by now, I'm sure you can tell that I have a huge imagination, and the only way that I can ground myself is by putting my hands onto clay. It earths me and grounds me. So this is my happy place. So I'll work with the clay in a very similar way to how I build up my collages, where I'll build multiple body parts and hack and bash and splice them together and go back and forth from the collage making back to the sculpture making, taking things apart and adding, changing the collages to work. So they kind of guide each other, the collages and the sculpture. And I'll finally land up with a piece that looks like this. And from there, I'll make a mold, and I use a foundry to cast my works in bronze. And I work very closely with the guys, with expert metal workers at the foundry, where we'll assemble the parts again, and we'll go will, it takes kind of hours to work together where we'll assemble the pieces and get the exact position right and weld them together. So this is the finished but raw bronze pieces. And from there, I'll decide whether to patina them with patina experts. I can't patina myself yet, but I'm learning. It's an incredibly beautiful and alchemical process, it feels like to me. Or I'll decide to paint layers. And at the moment, I'm kind of deciding whether to paint or to patina more or to expose the metal. So I'm going through a bit of a transition with my work. So let me show you my series called Tainted. I'll show you first the collage, which brought each piece to life, and then the actual piece. And the series is based on the waking up and the becoming aware aspects of growing up in Joburg. So this is the first collage that I created for this. He's a little Darth Vader who wishes to go back to his Death Star, but he lives in the middle of the Karoo. So this is the collage which brought my sculpture heroine to life. She's based on that time of me roller skating up and down my road, listening to music on my headphones and shooting bubbles from my gun, completely not aware of what was going on. The roads were burning and people were burning. But she did stop and she did see, and her heart is golden as it shows on her face. This is my Blolo space traveler, and he's part astronaut, part African sculpture, part spirit, and part robot. And he hangs around the Top Star Drive-In on the top of a mine dump in Joburg, watching sci-fi movies. He is all-seeing, and he looks out for his spirit twin up in the sky, who is intergalactic wanderer. She's also an astronaut and part spirit, part African sculpture, and part Barbie doll. She's a remnant of my Karoo imaginings, and her name is Nostau. She's turned into a spider by playing a game that she shouldn't have. This boy is called Hands Up, and he walks the streets of Joburg suburbs. His hands are up, and he was shot in the back 12 times for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is Pau Pau. She's so strong that she slayed Goliath just by looking at him. She wears a wrestler's mask and boxing gloves for protection, but she definitely doesn't need them. She is called Initiation, and she's going through puberty. Her entire universe is imploding, but she has the Powerpuff Girls to protect her from female circumcision. This piece is called Victory, and I believe that she's all of us. She's dragged herself out of the township holding a teddy bear and an AK-47. So, what am I interested in now? I'm interested in the transitional phase between childhood and adulthood. So that period of time where you need a lot of protection because you're growing and you're changing. So I'm looking at initiation ceremonies and things like scarification, which mark important milestones in your life. So these are the things that are influencing me right now. I'm completely obsessed with this series. Because it's so otherworldly and nostalgic at the same time. So this is what scarification looks like, and it's the marking on your body of important changes within one's life. This also allows me to look more at creating textures in my own pieces, where most of them are very smooth, but I'm looking more to high amounts of embellishment with my work. So I'm looking at these old embellished forms of armor. This is an initiation ceremony which boys in the Transkei go through at the age of around 18. They first are circumcised, and then they go out of their community into the wilderness, where they have to fend for themselves for 2 weeks and brave the elements. And at the end of this, they are men. So let me show you the new collages that I'm busy working on. They're completely unfinished, so I'm needing to layer them more with a lot more embellishment, and also using the armor, which I need to overlay over the top. So I have one more thing to show you, and that's my piece called Mighty Ndebele. She's so mighty that she's as tall as the buildings on Diagonal Street. She walks Joburg's mine dumps in search of gold, but she doesn't know that she's actually made of it. And in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with this, by saying that by tapping into our past, our present, and possibly our futures, we can then understand the gold that we have to make our work with. Thank you.